Hello, fellow rebel capitalists. I hope you're well. Wanted to go over a story from CNBC, something I tweeted this morning, or I tweeted about, and that is energy prices are absolutely skyrocketing. And we know that oil is up. I'm sure most of you have gone to the gas station lately and see that the price you're paying for gasoline has been going through the roof, but it's also coal, it's natural gas, and it's equaling or it's creating a lot of supply shortages, or it's a result, I should say, of a lot of supply shortages that are being created by this ESG movement and movement towards climate change agenda. And I'm not saying that climate change is fake or it's good or bad or any of that. I don't want to get into that conversation. But the bottom line is we live in a world of constraints, and we live in a world of limited, scarce resources with alternative uses. And what that means is there are no solutions, there are only trade offs. And we need to understand that if we're going to move into this world where we're reducing carbon emissions down to net zero or whatever their objective is. Also, I think we should be paying attention to how this fits into the global elites agenda to gain more power and control and to move into this socialist utopia. And maybe more specifically, what that means for the standard of living with the poor middle class and your personal freedom and liberty. So let's dive right into the story. We've got CNBC title: Climate Change Will Dominate Biden's Agenda When He Heads to Europe in 2 weeks. Key talking points: President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill will travel to Europe in 2 weeks to meet with climate change officials there. Biden will first visit Vatican City to meet Pope Francis before attending 2 day summit of G12, G20 leaders in Rome, where approval of global minimum corporate tax at least 15% will be on the agenda. Why would be the first thing that goes through my head. Why does Joe Biden need to meet with Pope Francis? Is that I don't know. I don't want to go down the conspiracy path there, but it doesn't really make sense. Okay, we're talking about a 15% corporate minimum tax. Do you really need to get Pope Francis's opinion on a global corporate tax? Don't think so. But regarding this global corporate tax that Janet Yellen, among many others, have been pushing for the last probably 4 or 5 months, you notice that it's the United States and these other high tax countries, when we're talking specifically about the corporate tax here, where they're the ones that are kind of forcing all the other countries like Ireland to bring their tax rate or commit to bringing their tax rate up. Well, let's just think that through. How is that fair to Ireland? How is that fair to all these other countries where the way they compete with countries like the United States or the UK or Australia or Canada is by having lower corporate taxes? That's their tool for competition. So what you're doing is you're going to those countries and saying, okay, well, we don't want you to compete with us anymore. So we don't want to become more competitive. Therefore, we want you to become less competitive. And I sent out a tweet the other day, and I think it's a perfect analogy where it's just like someone who is wildly overweight saying that there should be a minimum weight for every adult in the entire world or the entire United States or wherever they live of, let's say, 400 pounds or 300 pounds, because it's just not fair that me being 500 pounds makes me uncompetitive, let's say, when I go out there and try to find a date. So if everyone is just 400 pounds, then I would be much more competitive. So, all you healthy people out there, I need you to start eating poorly. I need you to stop exercising and gain weight ASAP, because I need to be more competitive when I'm out there looking for a date Friday night. That's basically what's happening here with the United States and these kind of them trying to punk these other countries into being less competitive for corporations, jobs, and entrepreneurs. But I'll stay on focus or on point with this article. Biden will round off his trip by traveling to Glasgow, Scotland, where he will attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference of the Parties, or the COP26. Geez. Okay, from November 1st to 2nd. And it's just, I mean, do we need all of these crazy acronyms and fancy names? And I mean, how about just a meeting of global leaders about climate change? I mean, it's just another reason why we, the average Joes and Janes, distrust the global elite, because they can't talk like a normal human being, and therefore, they have to use this code and these slangs that make it seem like they're doing something vitally important for the entire planet, or vitally important that you idiots in the real economy, you just can't mentally comprehend. Therefore, they are the intelligentsia. They are the chosen few that should be in this ivory tower giving instructions to the rest of the planet. And all we need you to do is just sit down, shut up, and obey. That seems to be their message, whether it's overtly or covertly, with all of their codes and labels and fancy names for their meetings. But let's keep going here. The leaders are expected to decide whether to approve an international tax plan. We just talked about that in July by financial leaders from the group 20 large economies, G20. The plan would establish global minimum corporate tax 15% and would change the way companies such as Amazon, Alphabet, Google are taxed, or it would just change the competitiveness of places like Ireland, or maybe the Cayman Islands, or areas that have attracted these corporations due to their favorable tax. And I want to point out that, yes, the corporate tax may start at 15% as far as a minimum, but I can assure you in 5 years, it's going to be 25%. It's going to be 30%. It's going to be 40%. And it's not going to stop at a global corporate tax. Once they establish the corporate tax, then they'll move over to an income tax. I can almost guarantee you that 2-3 years from now, they'll be talking about a global minimum income tax for all parties involved. And it's the exact same thing. The United States or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, they don't want to be competitive by actually lowering their tax rate and reducing the amount of government spending and intrusion, distortions, misallocations in the real economy. They just want all other countries to be as bad as they are, or as financially, economically overweight as they are. The Biden administration has pledged to cut greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030. Again, interesting year, this 2030. Is it coincidence that Biden and Trudeau and all these other politicians seem to use the year 2030? And when we go to the World Economic Forum's website, they say that by 2030, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. It seems, again, I don't know if we can connect the dots there, but it's oddly coincidental. I'll leave it at that. And they want to achieve net zero economy by mid-century. The Obama administration had set a goal to set emissions by up to, or to set a goal to cut emissions, by up to 28% below 2005 levels by 2025, but Trump stopped federal efforts to meet that target. Okay. And this is where you can tell the media has a specific agenda. And again, a reason why the majority of people out there, even on the left, left or right, they just don't trust the media, because they have a blatant agenda, but yet they come and they try to make you believe that they're impartial, that they don't have a bias, that they're completely objective, and they're just seeking the truth. And they try to make you believe that when it's just blatantly obvious to a third grader that they're pushing some sort of narrative. All right, but let's go over to a chart we have of carbon dioxide emissions from energy consumption in the United States from 1975 to 2020. And it peaks out here uh, right about when Obama was elected. I believe he was elected in 2008, but it starts going down prior to that. And what we can see is usually it goes down not really as a result of policy, but of economic activity. And so when we have a recession, like going back here from 1979 to 1982, did we just have some sort of policy change there that just dramatically reduced the carbon emissions from the United States? No, we just had a massive recession. And then you go to 2001, another recession, and then we have the GFC. Obviously, it just completely tanks. Now, it is true that since, let's say, the Fed did quantitative easing and kind of propped up the system, that it has declined, and that would be consistent with Obama's administration. But I don't know that you can sit there and say that there's a causal effect. Correlation isn't necessarily causation. And then let's go to their point with Trump. So he comes into office 2016, still goes down 2017. And then it does go up, but then in 2019 goes down again. And then in 2020, prior to Joe Biden coming in, it just absolutely plummets, the biggest decrease in carbon emissions that we have seen in the United States. Yeah, in 1 year, at least in this chart. So why was that? Well, of course, due to the cerveza sickness, or better said, the government's response to the cerveza sickness by completely crushing the US economy and the global economy, something we're paying for now with all of these shortages that we're having to deal with that make our society poorer because we have less access to goods and services. But let's go back here because I think they also talk about their further put. Yeah, here it is. Democrats are trying to pass a bill that will encourage the adoption of green energy and the construction of climate resilient buildings and infrastructure as part of the president's economic plan. Now, you may say, well, that's a fantastic idea. We've got good intentions there. And I would probably agree. I mean, I don't like breathing bad air any more than the other guy does. But we have to understand that there's a cost benefit analysis that needs to be done. And it goes back to Thomas Sowell, what he teaches us, that there are no solutions. He said it at the beginning of the video. There are only trade offs. So, although we may have cleaner air, what is the trade off? And we can see with this next chart, the trade off will be skyrocketing energy prices. And this is liquid natural gas. This is Asian spot. German power prices. I mean, look at this, up 500% since October 2020. Wow. I mean, Brent is up, but nothing compared to coal, compared to gas prices. Overall, German power. I'm not sure what's included there. But then in Asian spot liquid natural gas, I mean, almost 1,000% increase just in the last year. So you can see my tweet. The ESG movement may result in cleaner air, but it'll also result in a lower standard of living for the poor and middle class. Why am I saying this? Because a much larger percentage of the poor and middle class income goes to energy. So if energy prices are going up by 200%, 500%, 1,000%, and sure, that may be resulting in cleaner air, but how much disposable income is that poor or middle class person going to have left over at the end of the month? Zero. And they're going to have a lot less income to allocate to food, which, oh, by the way, those prices are skyrocketing as well, or less income to allocate to housing. And oh, by the way, those prices are skyrocketing as well. But let's go back to what they're saying about housing for a moment. that they want to adopt green energy and the construction of climate resilient buildings and infrastructure. And I've talked about this on both of my channels to a great degree over the past few months. And the World Economic Forum talks about this, that they want to retrofit housing to be more green. You say, well, that sounds like a great idea, George. Right. At what cost? I mean, I did the math for one of my videos, and I'll try to think of this right off the top of my head. But just for a normal, about 2,000 square foot house to retrofit it to these standards would cost, I believe it was 50,000, maybe $60,000. So who's going to pay for that? And I think this could take us down that path to owning nothing but being happy in 2030, according to the World Economic Forum. Because I think if they push this, how many people are going to have that $50,000 to retrofit their house? Very few. And so what's the alternative going to be? Well, you can just sell your house to the Fed, because by that time we'll all have a central bank digital currency. Well, meaning we'll all have bank accounts with the Fed. So they can buy your house just by printing up bank reserves denominated in dollars, those bank reserves that don't really circulate in the economy now. So they buy your house and just rent it back to you for a monthly rate lower than what your mortgage was. Win, win, win. Win for you because you have a lower monthly payment. For Americans, that's all they care about. A win for the Fed because now or the World Economic Forum, because now that house is an asset on their balance sheet. They own it. The global elite own it. And win for the environment. We all can go around breathing clean air, and the whales and the polar bears will thank us in the future. So, one more thing I want to point out before we move on, though, is this dramatic decrease. We're going back to the chart for the editors here. This dramatic decrease in 2020 for carbon dioxide emissions, and I hope I'm wrong on this one, but I see a high probability that in the future the global elite will try to make a case for doing periodic lockdown, even if the cerveza sickness is behind us. They'll say, oh my gosh, look at how great those lockdowns were for the climate. We reduced carbon emissions by a massive amount in 2020 or in 2021. And therefore, if we want to achieve our objective of getting to net zero emissions by the middle of this century, or if we want to achieve our objectives by 2030, the magic year, and get the carbon emissions down by 25% or whatever his number was, then the best way to do it is for people just to stay at home. Just lock yourself in your house. And oh, by the way, of course, we'll have the police out there monitoring things. So for those individuals who aren't taking this seriously and are climate change deniers and just are antithetical to science, and those people that just don't care about the human race, well, then the police will be out there to make sure that they stay in their house and to make sure that they behave. I think this could be where we're going. I hope I'm wrong. Okay, so the bottom line, the takeaway here is this is the direction the global elite are pushing us. It's this world where our number one public enemy is, well, the number one public enemy is going to be people who value freedom. But as far as the abstract public enemy number one, it's going to be climate change. It's a perfect boogeyman because they can sit there and there's no way to really quantify it. You can say it's going to happen in 10 years, in 50 years, 100 years. And if you don't give us, the global elite, more power and control, then you're going to basically doom the globe and doom the human race. And I want to be very clear, regardless of what you think about climate change, if you think the global elite care about clean air, if you think they care about you, if you think they care about society, you're lying to yourself. I can tell you that. They're just using climate change as a Trojan horse. They're just using it to create a crisis that inevitably gives them all the power and control over your life. That's the bottom line. That's what this is all about. It's not about climate change, not about clean air. It's about power and control. All right, guys, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, and make sure that you always stand up, fight for freedom. We'll see you on the next video.